Okay, so welcome, folks. This is our third video in a series of coaching through COVID, which we've been doing now over the last few weeks. Our first guests have been Tyron Pritchard from Ramsey Rugby Club. He gave us some background to some apps he's been using to go through some tactical awareness with his players within the club. It's been using that as a way of connecting with them and helping them to sort of get a deeper understanding of the game, really, whilst there's no actual training taking place. We've also had Claire Batty, the national netball coach. She's been giving us a bit of background as to what netball have been getting up to. And they've had a bit of a relaxed time in some respects because they've had a pretty full-on 3-year period since they entered the international arena as a country in their own right. So for them, it's been pretty full-on. So it's been nice to take the foot off the pedal a little bit and just do a few social bits and pieces really online. So have a look at those videos and you can catch up with Tyne and Claire and see what they've had to say. Today we have the legend that is Andy Fox from Manx Harriers and Isle of Man Athletics fame. And I've known Andy for a long time, being a fellow club member at Manx Harriers from my early years as a 15-year-old, and going on many Northern League trips with Andy as a very young senior man. Say that again, mate.
I remember you well back in the days of the School of Excellence. Do you remember?
Absolutely. And I think it was great to go along as a young athlete and have guys like Andy to sort of mentor you and put a hand on your shoulder and lead you the way, really, and show you the ropes in competing in senior competitions, which can be quite daunting for a young athlete when they're sort of 16 years of age and going into those competitions. So thanks very much for that, Andy. I appreciate that. And also the late great Steve Higgins. I think he was team captain when I first came into the senior team. And Steve was fantastic.
Passed away a couple of years ago now, but a legend from our club. And we had a little commemoration of Steve planned for sort of April time, which was a bench down at the NSC that was going to be put in place with his name on, etc. Obviously the family there and members from the club and obviously people from the past who knew Steve from athletics and other sports and general life as well. Unfortunately, that's all been put on hold as well while we wait for everyone to come out of this present situation. But hopefully that's something we'll get to do quite soon once we come out of the lockdown, etc.
Oh, brilliant. That'd be really nice. He was such a real genuine guy and had time for everyone and was really welcoming. So that'd be really nice to look forward to that day when we can sort of remember Steve.
We'll make sure that the information is out there, far and wide, so people can get to it. I know the family are very keen on that as well. And I think it would be a very nice thing to do. To remember Steve and for everything that he did. So yeah, agree.
Oh, super. So I mean, to kick off, obviously we're about 6 or 7 weeks into lockdown and things now, aren't we? So it's people are sort of
8 weeks, but we're in. It's a long time, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, and it's hard to know what day of the week it is sometimes as well. So that being the case, it's a new way of life for a lot of people. How have you been coping in athletics, Andy? How have you been sort of things?
Yeah, well, for me, when everyone started to go into lockdown, I was actually in Lanzarote on one of the famous Quines tours. So basically, we were in, basically Spain, and the hotel on Friday was completely normal. In fact, we were in Liverpool when the Atletico Madrid game was on, and I saw the Atletico Madrid bus, going into the hotel and all this before the match, and then leaving to go on because I went out for a run while we were waiting for our flight the next day out to Lanzarote. And then, of course, by the Saturday, things were starting to close down. And then on the Sunday, we couldn't leave the hotel grounds. And then we had to get away because all the flights suddenly disappeared. So we managed to get off Lanzarote on the Wednesday. We managed to book on the original rescue flight, which was then cancelled. I managed to get onto another one. But anyway, cut a long story short, we got back to the island just after the deadline for having to go into 2 weeks isolation. So got back on the island and had to go to 2 weeks isolation. So for me personally, I spent 2 days running around the hotel car park to keep fit. It had a bit of a hill on it, so I did a hill session on the second day, so that was good. The first day was boring, 30 minutes, doing about, I don't know how many laps of the car park. And then obviously 2 weeks in isolation, I did a lot of core work. Sister-in-law loaned a treadmill, so that got dumped in the garage, so I used the treadmill. And then obviously when Jan was out shopping or whatever she was doing, I would head into the garden and do a garden session or something like that, because obviously we had to be separate as well.
Yeah.
So I have to be honest, it was a bit boring. Bits of it were fine, bits of it weren't fine, didn't enjoy it at all. But I was glad when I came out of it, and I kind of felt once I came out of it, obviously you could go out for about an hour to take some exercise.
Yeah.
So I would try to fit in a session. I do my trainings, my hard sessions out on the road, and then I do everything else on the treadmill or in the garden. So I could go for a walk with Jan. So basically keeping, well, you've obviously got to do something together and something that you enjoy rather than just doing it yourself, haven't you? So try and fit in. And obviously with the training group, I've got about between 15 and 20 seniors, older juniors who are in my training group. And then I've got a wider group of about 9 or 10 juniors who I help as well. So basically trying to keep the juniors ticking along with just so many training sessions a week, just to really keep them fit and keep them in touch with the sport. And then with the training group myself, I've got some people who are injured, some people who are very, very fit, and then in between a number of people who are perhaps losing a bit of motivation. So came up with the idea of running a few individual time trials as a sort of challenge. So in other words, if you're getting a bit fit, you might want to just test yourself out and see where you are. Okay, there's no more to it than that really, but they were quite successful. And as a result of doing that, I'm also chairman of Manx Harriers, who are also looking at ways we could try, if through our committee meetings we've done on Zoom, as to how we could try and keep people within the club more, how should I say, motivated, inspired to do things, rather than just sort of slowly slip into a sort of monotonous, fairly sort of bit of a drudge kind of thing with your training. So that's where we tried to come up with little competitions and use things that are out there through UK Athletics. So we put out information for mums and dads regarding a thing called phonetics, which is basically athletics, but it's basically drills really.
How does it work?
Well, basically it's just about 26, 30 exercises. You've got a little video of the drill, so you can see what happens. And then basically what the kids do with parent supervision, because obviously coaches can't be there, is basically they can do that in their garden. So from you and me, we might say, oh, well, that's basically just a set of drills. That's just flicks, high knees, and some bounding. But basically they've got the little video. It shows the sort of coaching sort of aspect that you need to work upon, high knee or foot at right angle to the shin or whatever it might be. And then mums and dads can be looking for that, and the kids are doing it in the garden. So we put out information there about a bit of a warm-up that people should do or could do, then maybe try 4 or 5 exercises today, then have a cool down, then in 2 or 3 days time do another 4 or 5 different exercises, because some of them are aimed at throwing, some at jumping, some at sprinting, etc. There's less obviously middle distance kind of work because you're working in a garden. They're aimed at fairly small space work, but you can obviously still skip or jog on the spot or whatever for a period of time. So we put that information out for mums and dads, and then also for seniors, we sort of had this. Oh well, no, for the children as well. We had this fun pentathlon idea, which again came from UK Athletics. I think you've seen my little bit of a clip of me doing bits of the fun pentathlon.
Oh yeah,
So
on Facebook. I'll have to see when
yeah,
I splice it into the video.
I've got to be honest. I've had 3 goes at the fun pentathlon to make sure I got my score over 200 points, because I used to be able to long jump quite a long way, but the legs have got no spring in them anymore. So yeah, so basically it's good fun. There's you do a shuttle run over 5 meters, and you do that 20 times to get 100 meters. You get a time for that. Then you do 20 seconds of speed bounce. How many reps. You then do standing long jump, 3 attempts to get as far as you can. Measure obviously that. You then do it's not really standing high jump, but the vertical jump, and obviously the tip, and basically see how high you got from your standing position to your height position. And then there's a target throw over 3 meters and 5 meters, 3 balls or rolled up socks into a bucket or a laundry basket at 3 meters, and the same at 5 meters. You get so many points for getting it in or landing just in front of it, or if it lands in and bounces out, you get less points, but you get so many. And then you put all that into a database. It then gives you a score. Yeah, so we only had 12 people take part in the first competition, but we're hoping to run that again in June. I know lots of people are interested, but they maybe were a bit unsure about how to put it into the database or put their information forward. But we had some really good scores. So one of our youngsters scored something like 289 points, which I think would be pretty high up across the whole of the UK. Yeah. But the whole idea is the whole family does it, and it's a bit of fun as well. So that's a really good thing. I could keep going on. And then, of course, we've come up with the Foxy 5K challenge as well.
Well, just going back to that, Andy, I mean, what you've done there is very similar. In fact, it's very similar to the sports or athletics sessions. Yeah, the pentathlon.
Yeah.
And it's dead handy, isn't it? Because you can do it with very minimal equipment. You can track your improvement really easily as well, and you can have a bit of competition with your mates, even though you're not with them. And and are you doing anything to get any sort of social engagement online with those as well?
Yeah, all we've done so far is put the information out, i.e. the result, and then I personally have had some contact with the people who did it and how they enjoyed it, and then I put a little bit of a report in regarding how it went. What I hoped was that we would have a bit of comment coming in after the report, people saying, "Oh, you did well, so and so," or "I'm going to do better next time," or whatever it might be. That hasn't quite happened as yet, but I think what we need to do is look at how we can bring that about. And I think also one of the things that we're looking at doing is maybe opening it out to all of the athletics clubs on the island and seeing if all of the youngsters want to have a go. Because let's say if 12 youngsters at Manx Harriers do it and 12 at the other clubs do, well, you've suddenly gone to 36 or 48 youngsters rather than just 12. And I reckon that hopefully now people have seen it happen the first time, more people might be willing to give it a go. Because at the end of the day, it's not hard, it's a bit of fun. You do practice your skills, it's just a nice thing to do with the family as well. And the family could enter as well, because you never know, we might discover a new high jumper out there or long jumper or something like that as a result. It's just fun as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's got a lot of relevance for any sport as well, because it's all general athleticism, isn't it? Being able to jump and being able to run, change direction. So they're transferables.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think in athletics, we've always been used to the fact that we tend to have lots and lots of children taking part in the sport, under 7, under 9, under 11, under 13. And then, of course, we tend to lose the children a little bit, under 15, under 17, under 20. And that's because they're obviously taking part in other sports. Athletics is just one thing that they do. They might be very good at it, but those skills that they're learning are going to help them in rugby, in netball, in football, in basketball, you name it, even in things like cricket, perhaps. So in many, many sports. So, as youngsters get older and they decide they want to do this, that, or the other, athletics may not always be their first sport, but it might be something they come back to when they're a little bit older. And we see that. The number of people who I've coached over the years who were not interested in athletics when they were 15, 16, 17, 18, but have then come back and gone to Island Games and won medals, even gold medals. It is quite surprising, actually, because they come back to it in their 30s, perhaps.
That's brilliant. It's got that sort of bounce back ability for people to come back into a sport later on. It's fantastic. And you mentioned netball there, Andy, as well. And I think one of the points in the email was that you pinched a bit of an idea from netball with conditioning.
I can't remember if it was Claire who put it online or someone else did, but from the netball community. And it was basically coming up with a session where they did a load of exercises connected to the A to Z of the alphabet.
Right.
So for A, it might be press-ups, B might be burpees, and C might be sit-ups, etc., etc. So there were a lot of exercises in there that some of them I obviously, most of them I knew, some of them I didn't know exactly what they meant by the exercise, and some of them I felt were probably not as useful for perhaps some of the work that we might do in athletics or some of the core work that we might like to see happening. So I basically revamped the list to what I felt would be good for particularly middle distance runners, to be fair. Sure. And then I published that with the junior middle distance group, and some of the injured seniors that I have are doing the same. And then what they had to do for the first circuit, they do a warm up, then they do the A to Z, and they had to do it on their name. So, so for me, Andrew Charles Fox, my full name, I would have then, obviously, for every letter, an exercise, and between every exercise, a 20-second jog or 20-second skip on the spot, and then do the next exercise, and so it goes on. So what we've done since then is famous athletes from the past, because obviously lots of youngsters don't know very much, and even some of the seniors don't know very much about the history of the sport. So our kids now know about Emil Zatopek, Wilma Rudolph, Lynn Davis, David Hemery, Liz McColgan, and of course, the next ones will be whoever we decide from the great plethora of names we could choose from the past of athletics. So we've got a little bit of a competition going between two children in particular as to who gets in first with the information about who Emil Zatopek was, for example, or whatever the case may be. And of course, for those who don't know, quadruple Olympic gold medalist, but triple gold medalist in the 1952 Olympics, 5,000, 10,000, and his first ever marathon. He won gold in all three events. So fantastic runner, and obviously world beater, world record holder at the time. And if anyone's interested, his book, I think it's something like, it's called "It's a Good Day to Die" or something like that. Anyway, it's the life story of Emil Zatopek. It's a fantastic book to read because his story is wound into not just athletics and being an amazing, hard-working Olympian, but it's also wound up in the story of the Cold War, etc., because he was from Czechoslovakia. And of course, the Czechs tried to rebel against the Russians, and etc., etc. So there's a whole host of interesting stuff in his story, not just his athletic life. He was well known. He was a bit of one of our one of our well-known athletes on the Isle of Man, Dave Newton, was well known for gurning in races, pulling faces. Basically, pain, really. But Zatopek used to do the same. And when he was asked about it, he basically said, "I'm not talented enough to smile as well as run."
I think Johnny Epifani is another good one for
I've done my fair share, but Johnny's pretty good at gurning in faces as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, that's brilliant. I mean, you've got loads of stuff going on there that's keeping people engaged, keeping people active as well. And I think that's really important at the minute, that activity is still taking place. I'm listening to another podcast with the nutritionist for England Rugby, Graham Close. And just to drop, let's say you have your 10,000 steps a day, and all of a sudden you're at home, you're not moving as much. Let's say that drops down to about 2,000-3,000 steps a day. That's enough to have a real significant impact on your insulin sensitivity and how your body processes sugars and things like that, and can adversely affect your health massively over time. So it's crucial that we're doing that, and it's great to see coaches and and sports clubs getting behind the movement to sort of help sort of quell that inactivity really and keep people going.
I think it's nice if one area of your life can be as close to normality as possible. And okay, we haven't got competition at the moment, but if we can be training, and obviously it's easier for a distance runner perhaps than it is for a thrower or even a jumper. But having said that, if we can keep as close to normality as possible in one area, then it kind of relieves the tension elsewhere as well, really, because there's always something to look forward to that we know and we love, and we can do that. And I think a lot of people have talked about health and well-being and things like this, and I feel it's very important. It's something I learnt a lot as a head teacher, because obviously you're dealing with a big community of children and families. You're dealing with a large group of staff, both teaching and non-teaching. And, you know, during my time as head teacher, we went through a number of things. We had staff missing because of volcano ash in the sky, and that creating problems. We had a number of pandemics which didn't turn out to be as serious as this one, where we had to be careful with a number of things that we were doing. And unfortunately at St Ninians we had too many bereavements, really, for a number of, you know, very sad reasons over a number of years. And basically what I learned from all of that was that, yeah, you can sometimes just lie down and say, well, you know, that's it, and just let it happen. Or you can say, no, I can get up and I can do something about this that's positive for me and for everyone else, and we'll all come out of it better and stronger at the end. And I think that's the way we've got to look at this scenario. It'd be too easy to just give into it. You can tell I've been looking up quotations recently. There's another one that I read. I can't remember the guy who said it now. I've been using these with athletes, you see, as well. And it was something like, tough times come to an end, but tough people carry on. And I think, you know, we've all got to be a little bit tough at the minute because it's not easy. However, you know, it will come to an end eventually, and we will come through.
Like you say, having some sort of routine helps, doesn't it? You know, it helps keep you going, doesn't it? And stops you getting into a rut, and it sort of helps to guide your decision making a lot better, doesn't it? So it's easy to make, like you said at the start, it's easy to make bad decisions and go for the unhealthy food or sit and watch the TV because you're at home more frequently, and just do what's nice and simple. But you know, to actually go out there and spend a little bit of time setting up some sort of structure, and it'll pay dividends in the long run. No,
Yeah,
super.
yeah.
So how's your training group been getting on with the? You said they've been doing some like 5K challenges and time trials and things like that. Have they been enjoying that?
With the training group, sorry, Trev, with the training group, we've done 4 challenges so far. We did a 5K earlier on quite early on in the pandemic. In fact, not long after I came out of isolation, because obviously some of them had big races that they were intending to go to that had just been cancelled or postponed. And a lot of them were sort of a little bit not quite sure where they were going, what they were doing, because what they were aiming for had now just disappeared. Yeah. So I rewrote all the training plans, basically set up a program where they know they're going to get a training plan every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks, something like that. And within there, there'll be a time trial. And we actually started off, to begin with, because they're all relatively fit and training, we started off with a time trial. For me personally, that was a mistake, just coming out of 2 weeks isolation, because I wasn't very much ready for it. But it was good just to get out there, have a run. And of course, some of the guys, if it was it's amazing really, some of the guys were running PBs if it was a properly organised competition.
Wow. Well, that's brilliant. It's frustrating at the same time, isn't it?
Some of them are in the form of their lives.
Yeah.
Some of them are youngsters developing, obviously. Some of them have trained really hard for a long time and their races have gone. So it is a shame. So we've done a 5K. We've done a joint 2 mile, 4 mile. So the ones who are aiming more at the track might go for the 2 miler. The ones aiming more in the long run at half marathons or 10Ks might do the 4 miler. We've done a 3K and we've done a mile. So they're the ones that we've done thus far. And like I say, some guys have just been ticking along, improving a little bit. We've done the age grading as well, because that means you can look at your performance and you can compare a 60-year-old like me, 60-year-old male, with a 14-year-old girl, with a 45-year-old woman, with a 25-year-old bloke, etc. And you can, have quite a surprise, because sometimes the guy who's the fastest, actually on age grading, is only in the middle of the field. Right. And the guy who's in the middle of the field, who's a bit older, shall we say, or lady, actually turns up to be quite high up on the age grading. So it gives a different way of looking at the result. And actually is an interesting element here, because a lot of guys will be doing races and competitions, and they'll think of themselves as, I'm a half marathon runner, I'm a marathon runner, I'm a 10K runner. If they do some of the shorter stuff and they find their age grading is loads higher than some of their longer stuff, they may actually discover something new about themselves they'd never realized. And maybe it would be worth concentrating on doing a few shorter things in the future, because that might be somewhere they could be more successful. So, or vice versa, of course. So yeah, I'm looking at that and trying to sell it to them as a bit of an opportunity, really, to see and just, do a few things they might not normally do. So we've had some of the older ones who are maybe looking at doing longer stuff, doing shorter races, and younger ones doing shorter races, trying some of the longer races and seeing where they might go. So next week we've got an 800 and a 1500. We're doing those over 4 or 5 days. And the idea is then that we would go and then slot into the Foxy 5K challenge, which we've got over 90 people signed up for in early June. When again, over 5 days, there's an opportunity for everyone to run an individual 5K. Send the time through to me. We'll have 2 results, one which will be based on time, one based on age grading. And then obviously there's a wider group of people gaining that bit of, motivation, perhaps inspiration to help them.
Foxy's 5K challenge. Is that for the club members only, is it? Or is that wider than the club?
Open to anybody, everybody. So, I mean, if you're a netball player, you're a football player, you're a rugby player, and you want to do something a bit different, all you've got to do is send me an email. You'll get a training plan that you can follow. Up to you if you use it or you don't. It's only 4 sessions a week because you might do other things. You don't have to do all 4. You can do it as you see fit, use it as you see fit. But if you do the challenge over that 5 days, you'll then get a result. And you can then use that result to perhaps inspire you, motivate you to perhaps try in a month's time the next challenge. And obviously, as time goes by, I'll try to develop the training a little bit more. So hopefully over time, people would have an opportunity to run maybe a bit faster on their individual time trial. The reason for doing it over 5 days is because there are only so many places in each town where there's a flat, fairly quiet area where you could run 5K fairly quickly. So if there's 5 days in which you can do it, you can pick a time when it's going to be quiet, a place that's quiet, and you can go out and run your time trial and then send your time in. Because very, very serious that, people see a runner running or a walker or a cyclist and they think, oh, they're breathing heavily. They could breathe over me. I could catch COVID-19. Well, there's 2 things there. One, if they're fit enough to go out and run fairly hard, they probably haven't got anything wrong with them at all because they wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. But secondly, we're the guys who take responsibility. So we're the runner. We take responsibility, runner's responsibility. We see someone coming towards us. We can see onto the road. There's a bit more space. There's a bit less traffic. We'll move out, go around, or we'll find a different route to avoid them, footpath, or whatever it might be. And if possible, try and give more than 2 meters space if we can. So the idea is that, we take responsibility, but also that long period of time in which you can run your time, run your challenge, and then pass the information through, and then the result will be published in the paper and online. And hopefully a bit of banter then results, which is all good for everyone's self-esteem or bit of fun, shall we say, and then obviously move on to the next one. So I'm sort of thinking that we might try a 3K next, and we'll call it Foxy's 3K thrash or something like that.
So do you want to share your email address for any listeners, Andy? Is that okay? Or
yeah, if anyone's interested, we've got a few footballers online already. I know that, and also hockey players and netball players, basketball players as well. But like, they're only the individuals who've told me or I know of them. So there could be others. But if you want to get in touch, the email address is andycfox@outlook.com.
Super. So get onto that, guys. If you want to try something a bit different and get yourself fit in the process and get fitter. So
Get fit, yeah.
I need to pull my finger out, Andy. So I think I'll probably have a go at that myself because I jumped on the scales and they're not where I'd like them to be.
I haven't looked at the scales for a while. I would assume I'm pretty similar to where I normally am, because I have been keeping things going really as much as I can. And in fact, because we can now go out twice in the day, obviously I'm doing my running, and then I'm going out for quite a long walk as well. So probably doing a little bit more than I probably used to. So so that can't be bad, really.
Absolutely. No, super duper. Looking at the, I'm just having a little look through this list now. So how are you sort of engaging with your injured athletes? How are you sort of keeping the relationships with those guys?
Yeah, I've had one athlete with quite serious foot injury who's just coming out of that now. So the way that would work is that they or I are in contact quite regularly by email or on WhatsApp. Sometimes that'll be conversations. Sometimes usually it's just emails, really, or messages. And so for the person with the foot injury, that was a very much modified training plan. And then, I mean, initially they were under the guidance of the physio, really. So then from there we went into running every other day, to then building up to doing 2 days on the trot, to then 3 days on the trot, to then 4 days on the trot, to then starting to pull in a few sessions where they're running a bit quicker. And this week, so this is kind of started back in around Christmas time, really, just after. And then obviously it's carried on through this first 8 weeks. And this week, the athlete has said that they basically feel ready to just use the group training plan that we have at the moment and modify that. Normally what I would do is produce individual training plans for those who are particularly aiming at specific events. Whereas there are no specific events at the minute that we can do. We're all aiming at the challenges. So for me as a coach, you could argue it's a little bit easier in a way, because I'm setting more of a generic training plan. And all I'm really doing is modifying that slightly for those who are more track orientated, those more road orientated, and juniors. So for me personally, there's slightly less in the way of training plans to write. Hence, there's a little bit more space in my week and thinking about athletics to put into like the Foxy 5km idea, really, and try and help a wider group. So my training group, most of those individuals will be training 7 times a week. Some of them might be doing 8 or 9, but to be honest, we're trying to knock that back to 6 or 7, because at the end of the day, there's no point really hammering yourself at the moment, because at the end of the day, all you're doing are a few time trials. The guys who are doing the 5K training, building up to the Foxy 5K, I'm sending them only 4 sessions in the week. They're not really sessions. There's like 1 or 2 runs plus 1 or 2 training sessions. And obviously I've got to be aware that I've got some people who are very inexperienced runners and some who are a little bit more experienced. So what I'm trying to do is to put in different levels of training sessions. So you're all doing basically the same thing, but some might be doing it at a lower level and others might be doing more reps at a faster pace, maybe, because they're a little bit more experienced and can cope with that. So so really it's the same principle in both. It's not rocket science, really. It's a case of trying to sort of build towards. And the one thing that I'm going to try and get through to the guys that I'm working with is understanding their paces, because what tends to happen is people go off too fast in a race and then pay the price and have to slow down, or they don't go off fast enough And the basic reason is because they don't know what their paces are.
Yeah.
And the other thing that beginners don't often think about sometimes as well is warming up before racing. Because back in the day when we were all kids at school doing cross country, we all used to get our second wind, as people used to say.
Yeah.
What that basically meant was we'd set off like lunatics. We then kind of had to take a bit of a breath, and then basically we'd warmed up, and then we could crack on. Well, if you warm up before you start, then you don't have your second wind. You just keep going all the way through. So that's the element I've got to try and build in a little bit as well. So it's one of those things, you know, like I say, it's not rocket science, but there's lots of terminology and things like this that people talk about, and we all say, oh yeah, and whatever. But if you don't know what it means, you can't gain the benefit from it. So I'm trying to help with a little bit of that as well in some of the emails that I'm sending out to the new guys in particular.
Yeah. So when COVID and lockdown, it's a real pain in the backside, and it's no one really wants it at all. But there's a lot of positive things that are coming out from it as well. And I mean, for me, using things like Zoom, like we are now, because I'm a bit of a technophobe, but it's been great, and it's helped me to connect with people and do these interviews and share more knowledge and expertise. So from your perspective, Andy, what positive things have come out of this for you, and what one main positive thing do you think you'll carry forward when we come back to some sort of normality?
Well, I think the technical side of things that you're talking about, Zoom, I'd never used Zoom before. So, I mean, I've held a number of meetings now where I've been the host and been running the meeting, etc., and I would never, ever have done that. So in the past, so that's something that I've learned. I'm also learning more about, I know it sounds a bit ridiculous, but writing databases and things like this to do results, etc., more efficiently and things like this, because obviously if I've got 90, 110, 120 people doing a 5K, I can't just write lists like I always used to. So, you know, I've got to learn a few more skills, which, you know, I am the ultimate technophobe in many ways. So that's been good for me. And then also, I think it's kind of just underlining sometimes some of the thoughts that you've had in the past. You forget things over time. So there's lots of stuff that, you know, you read and you use, and you did that so long ago, and then it sort of slips to the back of your mind. You move towards something else, which is all good stuff. But sometimes it's good to just go back and look at other things so that you've perhaps done in the past. So I've sort of reconstituted. I mean, we used to do back in the 1980s, early 90s, before we had a running track on the Isle of Man, a lot of our training sessions were fartleks, were hill sessions, and we would do the odd track session on a grass track on the island. Well, there are hardly any grass, well, there are any grass tracks marked at the schools at the moment. So there aren't any. So we're having to do our sessions, our training sessions on the road, on the bit of grass you can get on, or on hills. And actually, that's not a bad thing to do. It's kind of going back to basics. And sometimes that's what you need to do from time to time, go back to basics, sort of reassess, and then come back stronger. And I think that's probably the big thing that I would take from all of this, that, you know, just because we can't run on a track, or we can't do this like we always have done in recent years, well, actually, we can still use that to come back stronger.
Yeah.
And if you're strong in athletics, certainly in distance running, well, you can add a bit of speed on the top, and you can do whatever you want beyond that. So I think there's a lot for runners to take from it, and I would hope it's probably similar in most areas, really.
That's good. I mean, when you're talking there about being strong in athletics, that's just sparked my mind. I've just been doing a bit of reading at the minute myself on if you ignore the guy on the front for his indiscretions with doping, I'm trying to expand my strength and conditioning for endurance running knowledge. Some quite good stuff in there as well. So the big take homes at the minute, because I'm not that far into it, are I suppose it's the dispelling the myths of strength training and endurance sport, really. And I think a lot of people think if they look at a weight, it's going to make them slow or something like that, or they're going to put on weight. And, you know, there's a lot of myths in there it dispels. And it's quite interesting to see how plyometrics and strength training can improve your running economy and actually make you much more efficient as well. So I mean, my background, as you know, Andy, is S&C training, as well as athletics and throwing. But I train some distance runners as well through S&C, and it's good to be able to sort of look into these things and expand your knowledge a bit more with a bit more time on our hands.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's always been something that I've believed in because, well, I think, well, you know, because you used to go to the sessions back in the day, but you know, I've run a core session, stroke circuit training session, whatever you want to call it, really,
Yeah.
every winter since 1987. And even though the numbers have sometimes been quite low, it's always been something that kept going because at the end of the day, the athletes that come to it do get a benefit from that. And I think the strength and conditioning work that obviously you guys do, which is probably more specific, is a really good thing for athletes to do, and any athlete in any sport basically. But certainly middle distance runners in the past just went out and ran. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but you've got to use these as well. I haven't got the biggest muscles, but I can do plenty of press ups if I have to, and I can probably outdo a lot of people in sit ups because I've done it all my life, and it's something that is really important. You have to be strong throughout the body, not just in the legs to be a good runner.
And it came through. I mean, it helps improve performance. It enables you to keep, I suppose, tolerate high training volumes and high training loads. And there's a lot of repetitive actions in running, and the training volume for endurance runs quite high. So quite easy to get injuries and break down. And the S&C, there's more and more evidence suggesting that it can reduce that injury incidence so that you can keep up those high volumes.
Yeah, if you think about the weight load that a runner's ankles, knees, etc. would take if they're running a half marathon or a 10K, every single pace, every time they put foot on the ground, they're putting more than their body weight through gravity, etc., and speed down through their legs and into the ground, and then bouncing up again. So the amount, I mean, I wouldn't like to guess, but you're talking hundreds of tons of weight, I would imagine.
It's about 1.5 to 2 times body weight. So if you're a 70-kilo runner, you could be putting 140 kilos of weight through one leg. Granted, it's not like doing a squat with 140 kilos through one leg, because you're on the ground for a very short period of time and the weight's gone again. But yeah, and think times that by the number of strides that you're doing, it's a hell of a workout.
It's actually frightening, isn't it? But of course, the other thing which you've kind of mentioned in the way there is, I think the strength and conditioning work also helps with sort of injury prevention and things like this as well, which I think is important. And then, of course, quite often, if you're doing strength and conditioning or some kind of core session or whatever, there would be an element of warming up, which would also give you an opportunity to do more mobility work and things like this as well. Because again, for runners, that's a thing that they're not very good at doing, generally speaking, because they like to, put their trainers on, go out through the door and come back, and they've just done their run. But really, before and after, it's a good time to do some stretching, just to ensure that those joints and those muscles and those tendons and ligaments are all well stretched and well looked after and ready for the next time you go out for a run. So and of course, maybe with, I found I've been doing more stretching. I've always known the importance of stretching, but of course, we're all a bit lazy and do, what we can get away with sometimes. But I found that I've done more stretching and actually done more yoga and stuff like that in recent times than perhaps in the past. So, I think it's something else. Actually, yoga is something that I've got a little bit into, not in a big way, but certainly to a degree, and I find that that's been useful for me personally. My track event was steeplechase, so basically hurdling at my age isn't a very easy thing to do, as you've seen when I've been training down the track, Trev, before the COVID-19 hit us. So I need every help I can get to keep as supple as I can. So I found yoga quite helpful, actually. And of course, I would have been running in the World Vets Championships in Toronto on April the 1st in the 2,000 meter over 60 steeplechase. had all this not happened.
Oh.
So in my eyes, you know, my debut as an over 60 steeplechaser is just going to wait another year till I'm 61 next year, and hopefully, you know, I'll get to the European champs next year. We'll see. But yeah,
and that's the shame in veterans age groups. You're trying to get the most out of that first year in a new age group, aren't you?
when you're young, you've got to make the most of it, you know. So I was young this year. Next year I'll be still fairly young, so I've got to go for it then. But yeah, but yeah, so things like that. I mean, they're little challenges that keep me going as well. Because at the end of the day, you know, you do need something just to keep your competitive juices going, etc.
So we'll draw things to a close. But before we finish, I mean, I suppose what a good question to finish on will be: what does the return to sport look like for athletics? Has the Athletic Association been having any sort of conversations or anything like that, and doing any planning to see how they might be able to sort of get back into things again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on the Athletics Association, so I can't speak for them personally and exactly where we are. So I don't know, but my view would be that we will at some stage start to come out of the lockdown from the point of view of athletics. And that will mean potentially some use of the athletics track, because that's the main element that's missing from the point of view of people's training at the moment. So I think we'd be talking training there, and we'd be talking use of the track. But I would imagine it would be some kind of booking system, and probably very small numbers to begin with. Maybe over time, that would then develop into more people using the track and a freer usage. But initially, we're going to have to wait and see. A lot will depend on whether there's, you know, a spike in cases or not, whether we continue to keep the thing under control on the Isle of Man and move forward. With regards racing, I think that's going to be further down the line. So, you know, I've got no idea when use of the track would come into play. You know, it might be 2 weeks down the line, it might be 2 months down the line. I don't know. But it's going to, I'd imagine, to begin with. But racing, I think, is going to be further down the line. UK Athletics were telling us to prepare for a possible short track season in September.
Right.
Now, most of the that's not a secret. That's in a number of their documents. They've not cancelled the British Senior Championships, which are in August. However, that doesn't mean to say they're going ahead. They just haven't cancelled them. So it's possible that they may go ahead, but I would say personally, I think that's doubtful. They've talked about having track and field shortened sort of season in September. I personally think that's going to be difficult anyway. We've already looked as Manx Harriers at the events that we've got timetabled for September, and would we decide to cancel any of those to put in a track and field meeting if that's what was going to happen. But I'm not sure that's going to happen. My personal view would be that if competition is going to arrive, it's probably going to be in the autumn. It's going to be perhaps in the cross-country season. And it may even be towards Christmas or even the new year, 2021. A lot will depend on where we go. So really what we're doing as a club is keeping a watching brief, putting out information from our committee meetings and stuff that we've picked up to members, so that they're aware of roughly where we're up to. There's not much more we can do at the moment.
No, it's fingers crossed, and it's encouraging to see that some other sports where it's easier to distance are starting to come back online. That's, you know, the target shooting, archery, and paddle sports, and golf, and things like that, and bowls. I suppose we're now just about to lift some of the restrictions on retail as well, I think, on the Isle of Man. So that'll be the sort of acid test, really, won't it? I think a lot more people in shops, still socially distancing, but if we're going to see any sort of spikes, it's probably going to come about as a result of that, most likely. And then obviously getting kids in schools at some point.
I think one of the issues for athletics is that obviously, you know, events where you can socially isolate, are some of the field events,
Yes.
because obviously you go in on your own into the hammer cage and you throw the hammer. But of course, you not many people have their own hammer. So basically, you then have to have a protocol for cleaning the hammer between, if it's being shared and used by different competitors. So that's one of our problems. Long jump, triple jump, again, that would be easier because obviously your foot is hitting the long jump board and you're taking off and landing in the sand. So social distancing between jumps, etc., would be relatively easy. Problem with track events is, I suppose you could have runners spread out on individual, not individual lanes, sorry, every other lane, something like that. But again, it's difficult to get to 2 meter distancing. And of course, in middle distance races and road races, etc., on the start line, you've got 150 people, 30 people, whatever it might be, all next to each other. And they're all going to be relatively close to each other for a period of time until the race spreads out. So until people are confident that's safe to do, whether that be myself as a competitor or myself as an organizer or governments as in that's the science says that's safe, I can see that those aspects are going to be a little way down the line still. So that's why I would say what we're doing with my training group basically is we're doing a few of these challenges through to June, July, which is kind of the track competition. Then we'll probably say, okay, take August off or the bulk of August off, have a break, and then start the build-up as we would normally in September towards hopefully some competition beginning again in October, November, December. So that again is trying to keep things as relatively close to the normal as possible. We're all sort of guessing a little bit in the dark, aren't we, at the moment? We're sort of we're trying to pin the tail on the donkey, but we're not quite sure where that's going to be and when it's all going to happen. So difficult.
No, well, it's interesting to hear some of your thoughts on how we could potentially move towards, some sort of athletic competition in the future. Well, like you say, it's a waiting game really, and we have to be sort of led by the government and the health officials, and fingers crossed the numbers go in the right direction and things can move along at a faster pace than perhaps we might have foreseen.
Just one thing to say there, Trev, is that obviously, we rely greatly on our volunteers, our officials, our coaches, our timekeepers, the people who hold the rake and do the raking, which again would have to be cleaned every time someone else used the rake, etc. at a meeting. But we rely on these people. They're fantastic people. And they do so much for our sport. And athletics is one of those sports that needs, especially on the track and field, a lot of helpers. And of course, one of the issues we have is that a lot of those helpers are not always in the best of health, and secondly, are of an age, shall we say. And so what that means is that sometimes they're the guys that need to be protected the most at the moment. So I think what we should be doing is accepting that we're in this situation until we come out of it and it's safe, not only for our own sakes as competitors or whatever, but also for these fantastic people who've kept our sport going for many, many years. And we want them to be around to keep it going for many, many more years to come. So we want to make sure that everything is right and safe before we don't want to be jumping the gun or anything like that, to use an athletic term.
Very prudent advice indeed, that, Andy, and very pertinent. And they have been the lifeblood of the sport, haven't they? A lot of events wouldn't be taking place without our volunteers, and recruiting volunteers. It's not always the easiest thing to do, and massive credit to the people who put themselves out there so that people can enjoy their sport. So let's do our best to support them in their return to sport as well. Okay, well, Andy, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate that, and hopefully that's going to give our listeners plenty of ideas for things that they might be able to get up to with their athletes, training groups, and sports associations. And if any coaches out there want to feature or share some of the things that they've been getting up to, just give us a shout. Give me a call on 688-590 or email me on trevor.christian@gov.im. So thank you, Andy, and all the best to you and your training group, and all the best for what's left of 2020 and beyond.
Okay. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Thank you.